The tomato plants were coming in beautifully this year. Rose Long knelt in the garden behind her cottage, her knees protesting against the damp earth as she tied a wayward vine to its stake. The late June sun was warm on her shoulders, and the air smelled like grass clippings and the sweet rot of overripe fruit. She'd planted these tomatoes in March, early girls, the same variety Thomas had always preferred, and now they hung heavy and red, ready for harvest. Thomas had been gone 7 years. Stroke, quick and brutal, the way he'd always said he wanted to go. "Don't let me linger, Rosie," he'd told her once, years before the end. She'd promised, but nobody had asked her opinion when the time came. She sat back on her heels and surveyed the garden. 2 neat rows of tomatoes, zucchini sprawling in enthusiastic chaos, basil and oregano in the raised bed Thomas had built the summer before he died. The cottage stood behind her, small and white with blue shutters, the house they'd bought 15 years ago when Thomas retired from the electric company. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people to pass each other. But it was hers. Well, legally, it was hers. The deed was in her name. The mortgage had been paid off 3 years ago with Thomas's life insurance. Every property tax bill, every water payment, every repair, all from her widow's pension and careful savings. But lately, she'd been feeling like the house was slipping through her fingers anyway. "Rose, you out here?" Gloria Martinez's voice carried across the fence. Rose looked up to see her neighbor peering over the pickets, a dish towel slung over one shoulder. "Just finishing up," Rose called back, pushing herself to her feet with a grunt. 72 years old, and her knees reminded her of the fact every single day. Gloria disappeared and reappeared a moment later at the gate, letting herself into Rose's yard with the easy familiarity of a decade's friendship. She was 10 years younger than Rose, with gray-streaked black hair and the kind of direct gaze that made people tell her things they didn't mean to say. "Your tomatoes are gorgeous," Gloria said. "Mine got some kind of blight. All the leaves turned yellow. Too much water, probably. You know how heavy-handed you get." Yeah. Gloria crossed her arms, her expression turning serious. "Anthony coming by this week?" Rose felt the familiar twist in her chest at the mention of her son. "I don't know. He's been busy." "Busy?" Gloria's tone made it clear what she thought of that excuse. "When's the last time he called?" Rose pulled off her gardening gloves, avoiding Gloria's eyes. 3 weeks, maybe 4. And before that? "Gloria, I'm just saying, honey. That boy used to come by every Sunday. You 2 would have breakfast together. Now he's busy?" Gloria shook her head. "That wife of his?" "Diana's fine," Rose said automatically, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. Gloria snorted. "Diana's a piece of work is what she is. Did I tell you what Michelle said? You know Michelle, my niece? She works in marketing downtown. Apparently, Diana's been asking around about real estate values in this neighborhood." Rose's hand stilled on her gloves. "What?" "Yeah, casual-like, but you know. What do you think a 2-bedroom cottage on Maple Street would go for? That kind of thing." Gloria's eyes narrowed. "You don't think she's—" "I'm sure it's nothing," Rose interrupted, but her heart was beating faster. "Maybe they're thinking of moving to the area." "Maybe." Gloria didn't sound convinced. "Just keep your eyes open, okay? I don't trust that woman." After Gloria left, Rose went inside and made herself a cup of tea. The kitchen was cool and dim, the afternoon sun blocked by the big oak tree in the front yard. She sat at the small table, the same table where she and Thomas had eaten breakfast every morning for 15 years, and tried to quiet the unease spreading through her chest. Diana, her daughter-in-law of 5 years, a sleek, polished woman who worked in marketing and always wore heels that clicked purposefully against hardwood floors. Rose had tried to like her, really tried. But there was something calculating in the way Diana looked at things, including this house. During visits, Rose would catch her staring at the crown molding, the original hardwood floors, the spacious backyard. Not with appreciation, but with assessment. And Anthony, her boy, her only child, 45 years old now, with his father's broad shoulders and his mother's dark eyes. He'd been such a loving son once. After Thomas died, Anthony had called every day, stopped by twice a week, fixed things around the house without being asked. But in the past year, since marrying Diana, those visits had grown fewer and farther between. The phone calls shortened, the warmth cooled. Rose's phone buzzed on the table. A text from Anthony. "Can I stop by tomorrow? Need to talk." Her stomach dropped. Something in those 7 words felt ominous. Need to talk. Not want to talk or let's catch up. Need. She typed back, "Of course, honey. What time?" The response came quickly. 2 p.m., no explanation, no warmth, just a time. Rose set down her phone and stared at her reflection in the darkened window. An old woman looked back at her. 72 years old, silver hair cut short and practical, liver spots on her hands, lines around her mouth and eyes. "You're being paranoid," she told herself. "He's your son. He loves you." But the unease wouldn't leave. And that night, lying in bed in the darkness, Rose stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time Anthony had said he loved her. She couldn't. Anthony arrived at 2:15 p.m. the next day, which immediately told Rose something was wrong. Her son was habitually early, a trait inherited from his father. 15 minutes late meant he'd been sitting in his car, working up his nerve. She watched from the living room window as his gray Honda Civic pulled into the driveway. He sat there for a long moment, both hands on the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard. Then he got out, shoulders set, jaw tight. Rose opened the door before he could knock. "Hi, honey," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "I made lemonade. It's hot out." "Mom, can we just talk?" Anthony stepped past her into the living room, not meeting her eyes. He didn't sit down, just stood in the center of the room where she'd rocked him as a baby, where they'd celebrated his birthdays, where Thomas had taught him to play chess. "Of course." Rose closed the door slowly, her hands suddenly cold despite the summer heat. "What's going on?" Anthony took a breath. When he spoke, his voice was flat, rehearsed, businesslike. "I've made a decision about the house." Rose's heart stopped. "What?" "Diana needs a new car. Her Honda's 10 years old and it's starting to have problems. We looked at our finances and the reality is," he paused, finally meeting her eyes, "we need to sell this house. You have 1 week to pack your things." The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually stumbled back a step, her hand reaching for the wall. What?" "I know it sounds sudden," Anthony continued, the words coming faster now, like he needed to get them out before he lost his nerve. "But you don't need all this space. It's too much for you to maintain. You're 72, Mom. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one's here to help? We've been talking about this and we think it's time." "We?" Rose's voice came out as a whisper. "You and Diana?" "Yes. We're married. We make decisions together." "But it's my house, Anthony. Your father left it to me." Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or shame. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by something harder. "And you'll leave it to me eventually anyway. We just need it now." "Need it now?" Rose heard her own voice rising, sharpening. "You need it. For a car." "It's not just the car. Diana's firm is talking about layoffs. My business has been slow. We're struggling, and this house is just sitting here. I live here, in 2 bedrooms. Mom, be realistic. You rattle around in this place. We could sell it, get you set up in a nice apartment somewhere. Smaller, easier to manage. You'd have people your own age around. I don't want an apartment." Rose's hands were shaking now. She pressed them against her thighs to steady them. "This is my home. Thomas and I chose this house together. We painted these walls. He built those garden beds. I scattered his ashes under the oak tree out front. You're telling me I have 1 week to leave all of that behind so Diana can have a new car? Don't make this about Diana." "How can it not be about Diana? You never would have done this before her." Anthony's face flushed. "That's not fair." Fair? Rose's voice broke. You're giving your mother 1 week's notice to vacate her home, and you're talking to me about fair? We've already contacted a realtor. She's coming by Friday to do the initial assessment. Anthony's voice had gone cold now, distant. I'm sorry, Mom, but this is happening. You can make it easy or you can make it hard, but it's happening. Rose stared at her son, at this stranger wearing her son's face. She thought of Anthony at 8 years old, crying in her lap after falling off his bike. Anthony at 17, hugging her tight after his father's funeral. Anthony at 25, calling her every Sunday morning just to talk. Where had that boy gone? Get out, she said quietly. Mom, get out of my house. Anthony hesitated. For just a moment she saw something in his eyes, doubt maybe, pain, but then his jaw set again. Fine, but you have 1 week. Friday, the realtor comes. I'm not changing my mind about this. He left without another word. Rose stood in her living room, listening to his car start, listening to him drive away. Then she sat down on the couch, Thomas's old couch that they'd bought at a garage sale 20 years ago, and tried to breathe. 1 week. Her son had given her 1 week to leave her life behind. Rose sat there as the afternoon light faded, as the shadows grew long across the hardwood floors. She didn't cry. She was too shocked for tears. She just sat and thought and felt something hard and cold forming in her chest where her heart used to be. Finally, as the sun set and the room grew dark, she stood up. She walked to the kitchen and picked up her phone. She had work to do. Rose didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Anthony's face, heard his words. 1 week. At 3 a.m., she gave up and went to the kitchen, made coffee, opened her laptop. The blue glow of the screen lit her face as she typed, "Can my son force me to sell my house?" The search results appeared. Page after page of legal information, elder financial abuse, undue influence, power of attorney, guardianship. The words blurred together, but certain phrases jumped out. Common in family relationships, often goes unreported due to shame or fear. Victims may not realize they have legal recourse. Rose clicked on a link to the National Center on Elder Abuse. Read case studies. Stories that sounded horribly familiar. Adult children pressuring elderly parents. Threats disguised as concern. Financial exploitation dressed up as helping. At 5 a.m., she called Gloria. Rose? What's wrong? Gloria's voice was thick with sleep, but instantly alert. He wants to sell my house. Anthony came by yesterday and told me I have 1 week to pack up and leave. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, Jesus Christ. Gloria, I don't know what to do. You need a lawyer, right now, today. I don't even know where to start. I do. Hold on. Rose heard rustling. Then Gloria's voice became clearer. Robert Harrison. He's an estate attorney, does a lot of work with elder law. My aunt used him when her kids tried to get her to sign over her condo. He's good, Rose, and he doesn't take shit from anyone. Rose wrote down the number with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're going to fight this. You hear me? After they hung up, Rose sat with the phone in her lap. The sky outside was lightening, turning from black to deep blue. A new day beginning. She should have been tired, but adrenaline was singing through her veins. She looked at the number Gloria had given her. Then she looked around her kitchen. At the ceramic rooster on the windowsill that Thomas had bought her on their anniversary. At the magnet on the fridge from their trip to Niagara Falls. At the nick in the cabinet door where Anthony had accidentally hit it with a baseball bat when he was 12. This is my home, she thought, and I'm not giving it up without a fight. At 9 a.m., Robert Harrison's office opened. Rose called. Got an appointment for that afternoon. But she didn't stop there. She spent the morning driving. First to Anthony and Diana's house in the suburban subdivision 15 minutes away. Both cars were in the driveway, Anthony's Honda and Diana's vehicle. Rose slowed down as she passed. Diana's car was a white Honda Accord. It looked fine. Clean. well-maintained. Not the desperate, falling-apart vehicle Anthony had described. Rose took a photo with her phone. Next, she drove to the public library, used their computer to search for Diana's social media profiles. Found her on Facebook. The account was semi-public. Rose scrolled through recent posts. 3 weeks ago, a photo of Diana at a restaurant, champagne glass raised. Caption, celebrating life's little victories. 2 weeks ago, a screenshot of a Lexus dealership website. Caption, dream car goals. 1 week ago, a photo of Anthony looking uncomfortable at what appeared to be a company party. Diana's arm around him. Caption, climbing that ladder together. Nothing about financial struggles, nothing about layoffs or slow business, just aspirational posts about success and luxury. Rose took screenshots of everything. By the time she arrived at Robert Harrison's office at 2 p.m., she had a folder full of printed pages, articles about elder abuse, photos of Diana's car, screenshots of social media posts, Anthony's text messages, a timeline of events. Robert Harrison was in his 50s with steel gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He listened to Rose's story without interrupting, his expression growing progressively grimmer. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Long, I'm going to be straight with you. What your son is doing is a classic case of financial exploitation. He has no legal right to sell your house. This is your property. You're competent, clearly, and you haven't signed anything over to him." But he seemed so sure, because people like your daughter-in-law are very good at making people feel helpless. Robert tapped the papers on his desk. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to make sure your house is protected. Have you heard of a living trust?" Rose shook her head. "It's a legal entity that holds assets. You'd transfer ownership of your house from yourself personally to the Rose Long Living Trust, with you as the trustee. You'd still control everything. You could live there, sell it, whatever you want. But it creates a legal barrier that makes it much harder for someone to challenge your ownership or force a sale. How long does that take?" "With expedited processing, 2 weeks, maybe 3. Rose's stomach sank. "Anthony said the realtor is coming Friday. That's 3 days. Robert smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Let her come. She can assess the property all she wants. Doesn't mean anything unless you sign papers agreeing to list it. Which you won't." He pulled out a legal pad. "Now I'm also going to recommend you get a psychiatric evaluation." "You think I'm crazy?" "Absolutely not. But I think your son might try to claim you're incompetent. It's a common tactic. A psych-eval proving you're of sound mind will shut that down before it starts." He looked at her seriously. "Mrs. Long, I've handled cases like this before. They can get ugly. Family members can say terrible things. File false reports. If you want to protect yourself, we need to be thorough." Rose thought about Anthony's face yesterday, the coldness in his voice, the way he'd said, "This is happening. I want to be thorough," she said. "Good." Robert made a note. "One more thing. Do you have security cameras?" "No?" "Get some. Hidden ones if possible. I have a feeling they're going to come back, and you'll want documentation of everything they say and do." Rose left the office 2 hours later with a plan, a stack of papers to sign, and an appointment with a psychiatrist for the next morning. Her hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from rage. What Rose didn't tell Robert Harrison, what she didn't tell anyone, was that this wasn't the first warning sign. That night, alone in her house, Rose pulled out a shoebox from the back of her bedroom closet. Inside were documents she'd been collecting for 6 weeks. It had started in early May. A phone call she wasn't supposed to hear. Rose had stopped by Anthony's house unannounced with a casserole. He'd mentioned Diana was working late hours, and Rose thought they could use a home-cooked meal. She'd used her key to let herself in. Anthony had given her one years ago, in case of emergencies. The house had been quiet. She'd called out, heard Anthony's voice from upstairs. He was on the phone in his home office. Rose had started toward the stairs to let him know she was there, but something in his tone had stopped her. I know, but it's not that simple, Diana. She's my mother. A pause. Yeah, the house is worth at least 400 grand, but I can't just... Another pause, longer this time. Anthony's voice had dropped. You really think we could do that? Just tell her she has to move? Silence. Then quieter. And what if she says no? Rose had stood at the bottom of the stairs, frozen, the casserole dish growing heavy in her hands. Diana's voice had been too faint to hear, but Anthony's responses had told her everything she needed to know. I guess you're right. She's getting older anyway. It's probably for the best. A bitter laugh. Yeah, once she's gone, it all comes to me anyway. Rose had set the casserole on the kitchen counter and left without a word. That night she'd lain awake, trying to convince herself she'd misunderstood, misheard. But the sick feeling in her stomach wouldn't go away, so she'd started paying attention. She'd noticed Diana's friend Michelle, Gloria's niece, asking casual questions about the neighborhood at church. What do you think houses on Maple Street go for these days, Rose? Just curious. She'd noticed Anthony calling less frequently, the conversations growing shorter, more perfunctory. She'd noticed Diana's Facebook posts about upgrading our lifestyle and investing in our future. And 2 weeks ago, she'd been in her garden when she'd heard them arguing in her driveway. They'd thought she was at her doctor's appointment. She was supposed to be, but the appointment had been rescheduled and Rose had come home early. When are you going to talk to her? Diana's voice, sharp and impatient. Soon. I just need to find the right time. There is no right time, Anthony. We need that money. My car's not going to last forever and your business is barely breaking even. That house is just sitting there. She lives there, Diana. She doesn't need all that space. Jesus, Anthony, she's 72. How much longer is she even going to... Diana had caught herself, but the implication hung in the air. Rose had stood in her garden, dirt on her knees, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. That same day, she'd made an appointment with a different lawyer. Not Robert Harrison, but a lawyer in the next town over. She'd asked about living trusts, about protecting her assets, about what happened to property when elderly people died without proper planning. And she'd started the process of creating the Rose Long Living Trust. It had taken 4 weeks. Paperwork, notarization, filing with the county. She'd paid for expedited processing. The whole time she'd kept waiting for Anthony to bring it up naturally, to have an honest conversation. But he hadn't. He'd just shown up yesterday and given her 7 days. Now, sitting in her bedroom with the shoebox in her lap, Rose pulled out the final document. It was dated 10 days ago. The official deed transfer, recording the change of ownership from Rose Long, individual, to the Rose Long Living Trust, entity, with Rose Long as sole trustee and beneficiary. Her house was already protected. It had been for over a week, but she hadn't told Anthony, or Diana, or even Gloria. She'd been waiting to see what they'd do, testing them, hoping desperately that they'd prove her wrong. They hadn't. Rose returned the shoebox to the closet. Tomorrow she'd meet with Robert Harrison again and show him these documents. She'd also show him the photos she'd taken of Anthony and Diana's cars, the Facebook screenshots, the timeline of increasingly aggressive hints about the house. But tonight, she allowed herself one moment of weakness. She went to Thomas's workshop in the garage, the space he'd converted years ago, full of tools and sawdust and the ghost of his presence, and sat in his old chair. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, she whispered to the empty room. He's our boy, Thomas. Our baby. But Thomas wasn't there to answer, and the workshop remained silent. Rose closed her eyes and saw Anthony's face again. The coldness, the calculation, the way he'd said, 1 week. When she opened her eyes, they were dry, clear. I'm sorry, she said to Thomas, to the memory of the son she'd raised, to herself. But I have to protect myself, even from him. She stood up, turned off the light, and went back inside. The war had begun, and Rose Long was ready. Friday came. Rose woke at dawn, her stomach in knots. Today was the day Anthony's realtor was supposed to arrive. She made coffee with steady hands, dressed in a simple blue blouse and khaki pants, put on lipstick, something she rarely did anymore, but today she wanted to look composed, unshakable. The security cameras had been installed Wednesday morning. Tiny things, hidden in the eaves of the porch, in the living room bookshelf, in the kitchen cabinet. The installation technician, a young woman named Sarah who asked no questions, had shown Rose how to access the footage from her phone. Everything's recording to the cloud, Sarah had explained. Even if someone destroys the cameras, you'll have the video. Rose had paid cash, didn't want a paper trail Anthony might find. At 10 a.m., her phone rang. Anthony's number. "Mom, Cheryl's coming by at 11, the realtor. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Rose kept her voice carefully neutral. "I'll be here." "Good. And Mom, I know you're upset, but this really is for the best, you'll see." She wanted to scream at him. Instead, she said, "We'll talk when you get here." "I'm not coming. Just Cheryl. She'll do the assessment and we'll go from there." "I see." Rose's grip tightened on the phone. "And Diana? Is she coming?" "She's working. Look, I gotta go. Just be civil, okay?" He hung up before she could respond. At 10:47 a.m., Rose called Anthony back. He answered on the third ring, sounding annoyed. "What, Mom? I've been thinking about what you said, and I'd like to talk. Really talk. Not about the house, about us, about why you think this is necessary." She paused, injecting just the right amount of tremor into her voice. "Could you and Diana come to dinner tonight? I'll make pot roast, your father's recipe." Silence on the other end, then suspicious. "What's this about?" "It's about family, Anthony. I don't want to fight. I want to understand. Please, just dinner. 6 o'clock. Another pause. Rose could practically hear him calculating, wondering if this was a trap. "Fine. We'll be there at 6. The realtor arrived at 11 sharp. Cheryl Hammond was a blonde woman in her 50s with a professional smile and a leather portfolio. Rose invited her in with perfect politeness. "What a charming cottage," Cheryl said, looking around the living room. "Original hardwood floors, I see. These are lovely." "Thank you. My husband and I restored them ourselves." "And you're looking to sell?" Rose smiled. "My son seems to think so." Something flickered in Cheryl's eyes. Confusion, maybe wariness. "I'm sorry, I was under the impression you were ready to list. I'm not. But you're welcome to look around. Take your notes." "I have nothing to hide." Cheryl did her assessment. Measured rooms, took photos, made notes about updates needed. Rose followed her through the house, cordial but distant. When they reached the master bedroom, Cheryl paused at the photo on the nightstand. Rose and Thomas on their wedding day, both young and smiling. "You were married a long time?" Cheryl asked softly. 43 years. "I'm sorry for your loss." Cheryl closed her notebook. "Mrs. Long, can I speak frankly? Please. In my line of work, I see a lot of family dynamics, and I've learned to recognize when something doesn't feel right. Your son told me you were eager to downsize, but you don't seem eager." Rose met her eyes. "That's because I'm not." Cheryl nodded slowly. "Then I won't waste your time or mine. I'll tell your son I did the assessment, but I won't be listing this property unless you call me directly and ask me to. Here's my card. Call me if, and only if, you decide you want to sell." After Cheryl left, Rose sat on her porch and waited for evening. She'd baited the trap. Now she needed to see if they'd walk into it. Rose spent the afternoon cooking, pot roast with carrots and potatoes the way Thomas used to make it, green beans with bacon, biscuits from scratch. She set the table with the good china, the set they'd received as a wedding gift and only used on holidays. The security cameras were recording. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter, ready to document anything that happened. At 6:07 p.m., Anthony's Honda pulled into the driveway. Rose watched from the window as he and Diana got out. They stood by the car for a moment, having a conversation she couldn't hear. Diana gestured emphatically. Anthony's shoulders were hunched. Rose opened the door before they could knock, smile fixed in place. Come in, dinner's ready." Diana entered first, heels clicking on the hardwood. She was dressed for business. Black pants, white blouse, red blazer, power clothes. She looked around the living room with barely concealed assessment. "Something smells good," Anthony said, but his voice was flat. They sat down at the table. Rose served the food. For the first few minutes, they ate in awkward silence. "So," Rose said finally, setting down her fork, "tell me about your financial situation. I want to understand." Diana's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "Anthony said you're struggling, that your firm is talking about layoffs, that his business is slow. I'd like to help, but I need to see the full picture." Anthony and Diana exchanged a glance. Rose caught it, filed it away. "It's complicated," Anthony said. "Then uncomplicate it for me." Rose kept her voice gentle. "I'm your mother. If you're really in trouble, I want to help, but I need to see documentation. Bank statements, bills, business records. If you're asking me to give up my home, I deserve to know exactly why." Diana's jaw tightened. "We don't need to prove anything to you. Actually, you do. This is my house, my decision. If you want me to sell it, I need to understand the necessity." "The necessity," Diana said, her voice going sharp, "is that you're 72 years old, living alone in a house that's too big for you. Anthony is your only child. This property will be his eventually anyway. We're not asking for something that isn't already his inheritance. We're just asking to access it now when we need it." Rose took a sip of water, buying time. "I see. And what do you need it for specifically?" "My car." "Your car looks fine, Diana. I drove by your house. Both cars looked well maintained." Diana's eyes narrowed. "You were spying on us?" "I was gathering information, the same way you've been gathering information about my property values from Gloria's niece." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Anthony set down his fork. "Mom, I'm not trying to be difficult," Rose continued, "but you came to my home and gave me 1 week's notice to vacate. You didn't ask. You didn't discuss. You dictated. So forgive me if I need a little more than vague claims about financial hardship." Diana stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You know what? This was a mistake. Anthony, we're leaving." "Wait." Anthony looked between them, trapped. "Let's just calm down." "No!" Diana's voice was ice. "Your mother clearly doesn't trust us. She's been spying, interrogating, treating us like criminals when all we've done is try to help her see reality." She turned to Rose. "You want documentation? Fine, we'll bring you documentation, but we're not going to sit here and be cross-examined like we're on trial." She headed for the door. Anthony hesitated, looking at Rose with something that might have been guilt or might have been anger. Then he followed his wife. Rose sat alone at the table, the pot roast growing cold, and waited. The cameras had captured everything. In 3 minutes, she'd review the footage. But first, she needed to see what happened next. She didn't have to wait long. Through the window, she heard their voices in the driveway. Sharp, angry. She moved to the kitchen, closer to the window, and listened. "Being completely unreasonable," Diana was saying. "She wants to see bank statements. That's not unreasonable." "We don't have time for this, Anthony. I already put the deposit down on the Lexus. $5,000. The dealership expects the rest in 3 weeks. Rose's breath caught. A deposit. Diana had already spent money on the assumption they'd have Rose's house. "You did what?" Anthony's voice rose. "Diana, we don't have that money." "We will when we sell the house." "But she's not agreeing to sell." "Then make her agree." Diana's voice was vicious now. "Jesus Christ, Anthony, she's your mother. You can't control one old woman. This was supposed to be simple. Tell her to move, sell the house, use the money to fix our problems. But you're too weak." "I'm not weak." "Then prove it. She's stalling. She's playing games. We need to push harder." "How much harder?" "She's asking for documentation, Diana. If we show her our actual finances, she'll know..." "She'll know what?" Silence. Then quieter. "Nothing. Forget it." "No, say it. She'll know what, Anthony?" "She'll know we're not actually struggling, that your company's not doing layoffs, that my business is fine. She'll know we just want the money." Rose's hand flew to her mouth. There it was, the truth, laid bare. Diana's laugh was cold. So what? What's she going to do? She's one old woman. We're her family. If we push hard enough, she'll cave. They always do. The car doors opened and slammed. The engine started. They drove away. Rose stood in her kitchen, trembling. She pulled out her phone and checked the camera footage. The audio had captured every word. She forwarded the recording to Robert Harrison with a simple message. Evidence. Call me tomorrow. Then she sat down at her table and allowed herself one moment of pure grief. Her son, her baby, had become this. But the grief hardened quickly into something colder, something more useful. Determination. The next morning, Rose met with Robert Harrison and played him the recording. His face remained professionally neutral, but she saw his jaw tighten. "This is damning," he said. "Proof of fraudulent intent. If they try to force a sale or claim you're incompetent, this demonstrates clear consciousness of wrongdoing." "I need to know more about Diana," Rose said. "Anthony wasn't like this before her. I need to understand what I'm dealing with." Robert hesitated. "Mrs. Long, I can run a basic background check, public records, that sort of thing. But anything deeper might cross ethical lines." "Just public records, then." The report came back 2 days later. Rose sat in Robert's office, reading through pages of Diana's life distilled into bullet points and legal documents. Diana Marie Foster, born in Detroit. Mother, Evelyn Foster, worked as a housekeeper at the Renaissance Center. Father, unknown, not listed on birth certificate. There were school records. Diana had been a good student, honor roll, scholarships to community college, a degree in marketing from Wayne State University, earned over 6 years of night classes while working full-time. Then a marriage license from 2015. Diana Foster to Richard Brennan, age 63. Rose's eyebrows rose. Diana would have been 28. Richard was more than twice her age. "Who's Richard Brennan?" Rose asked. Robert had clearly anticipated the question. He was a successful real estate developer, worth about $15 million when they married. They divorced 3 years later. "Let me guess. She got nothing?" "Ironclad prenup. She walked away with exactly what she'd brought into the marriage, which was nothing." Rose flipped through more pages. After the divorce, there were a series of addresses, each one slightly worse than the last. Diana had moved 6 times in 2 years, each apartment smaller and cheaper. Employment records showed her bouncing between marketing firms. Then, 5 years ago, she'd met Anthony. They'd married quickly, 8 months after their first date. Rose set down the papers. She grew up poor, married for money, and it didn't work out. Now she's terrified of being poor again. "That would be my assessment, yes." Rose thought about Diana's voice in the driveway. "We need that money. The dealership expects payment in 3 weeks, the desperation underneath the entitlement." "It doesn't excuse what she's doing," Rose said. "No," Robert agreed, "but it explains it." That night, Rose lay in bed and tried to find compassion for Diana, a girl who'd grown up with nothing, who'd clawed her way to a degree and a career, who'd thought she'd found security in a rich older husband only to be discarded with nothing, who was now so terrified of poverty that she'd exploit an elderly woman to avoid it. Rose understood fear. She'd been afraid many times in her 72 years, afraid when Thomas got sick, afraid when the medical bills piled up, afraid in those first months after he died, when she'd had to figure out how to live alone. But fear didn't give Diana the right to steal. Fear didn't give Anthony the right to betray his mother. Understanding someone wasn't the same as forgiving them. Rose thought about what Gloria had said. Understanding someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, Robert was taking her to get the psychiatric evaluation. The pieces were falling into place, but she couldn't shake the image of young Diana working night shifts and going to school during the day, desperate to escape poverty. Of Diana sitting in a lawyer's office, learning that 3 years of marriage had earned her nothing because she'd signed a prenup. She made choices, Rose reminded herself, just like Anthony is making choices now. Still, the sadness lingered. The next 2 weeks were psychological warfare. It started with flowers, a massive bouquet of roses delivered to Rose's door. The card read, "Sorry for the tension. We love you. Anthony and Diana." The next day, a fruit basket. The day after that, chocolates. Diana called, her voice honey-sweet. "Rose, I feel terrible about how dinner ended. I was stressed from work and I took it out on you. Can we start over?" Anthony stopped by with coffee and donuts. Anthony acting sheepish. "Mom, I know I came on too strong. I've just been worried about you, you know? This house is a lot for one person." They invited her to dinner at their place. Diana cooked surprisingly well, and the evening was pleasant, almost like old times. Diana asked about Rose's garden, complimented her blouse, shared funny stories from work. Rose smiled and laughed and played along, all while the recorder in her purse captured every word. As she left, Anthony hugged her tight. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, honey." But as she drove home, Rose's hands were shaking, because underneath the warmth, she'd felt the calculation. They weren't reconnecting. They were softening her up. The shift was subtle at first. Little comments, easily dismissed. "You're looking tired, Mom. Are you sleeping okay? Did you take your blood pressure medication today? You seem forgetful. Maybe we should set up one of those pill organizers for you, to help you keep track." Then, less subtle. "I talked to Dr. Williams," Anthony said during a visit. "He mentioned you missed your last appointment." Rose had canceled because the appointment conflicted with a meeting with Robert Harrison. "I rescheduled." "But you didn't tell me. What if something had happened?" "Anthony, I'm 72, not 92. I can manage my own appointments." "Can you?" Diana interjected, her voice pointed. "Because you seem confused lately. You accused us of spying when we were just looking out for you. You're suspicious of everyone. That's not normal, Rose." Rose felt ice slide down her spine. They were building a narrative, planting seeds, setting up their next move. "I'm not confused," she said firmly. "Of course not," Diana soothed. But her eyes said something different. The next day, Rose got a call from her doctor's office. "Mrs. Long, your son called. He's concerned about your memory. He'd like us to schedule a cognitive assessment." "Tell my son I don't need an assessment. He mentioned you might be resistant. He said that's one of the signs of decline." "I'm not in decline," Rose's voice rose. "And my son doesn't have the authority to schedule my medical appointments. Is that clear?" A pause. "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry." Rose hung up, shaking with rage. They were trying to build a case, calling her doctors, planting suggestions. If enough people started questioning her competency, it wouldn't matter that she was fine. The doubt itself would become evidence. She called Robert Harrison immediately. "Good," he said when she explained. "This is actually good." "How is this good?" "Because they're panicking. They know you're not cooperating, so they're escalating. And every escalation gives us more evidence. Keep documenting everything." 2 days later, a social worker showed up at Rose's door. Young man, mid-30s, with a clipboard and an apologetic expression. "Mrs. Long, I'm Jason Torres from Adult Protective Services. We received a report of concerns about your welfare." Rose's vision blurred for a moment. "Who reported it?" "I can't disclose that. But someone close to you expressed worry about your ability to care for yourself. May I come in?" Rose let him in because refusing would look bad. Jason asked questions, looked around the house, checked her refrigerator, her medications, her general cleanliness and organization. After 30 minutes, he closed his notebook. "Mrs. Long, your home is clean and well-maintained. You're clearly managing fine. I'm going to close this report as unfounded. Can you tell me what the complaint said?" Jason hesitated. "The reporter claimed you weren't eating properly, that you were confused and forgetful, and that you were living in unsafe conditions. None of that appears to be true. In my professional opinion, this looks like—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. Family dynamics can be complicated. After he left, Rose called Robert and Patricia, Anthony's aunt, her sister-in-law. Patricia answered on the second ring. "Rose? Everything okay?" "Patricia, I need you." And Rose told her everything. Patricia arrived from Arizona 2 days later. She was 68, with Thomas's same dark eyes and sharp wit. She'd always been closer to Rose than to her own nephew. "That boy," Patricia said, setting her suitcase in the guest room. "Thomas would be ashamed." "I need to understand what happened to him," Rose said. "He wasn't always like this." "No," Patricia agreed. "But he's always been susceptible. Remember that friend in college, Marcus? Got Anthony involved in some pyramid scheme. Anthony lost $5,000 before Thomas put his foot down." Rose remembered, but she'd thought Anthony had learned from that. "I'm going to dig around," Patricia said. "Call some people. Thomas's brother Carl still has connections in the construction world. Let me see what I can find out about Anthony's business." 3 days later, Patricia came into the kitchen with her laptop, her face grim. "Rose, sit down." Rose sat. "Anthony's been gambling. Heavily. There's a riverboat casino 40 minutes from here. Carl's son-in-law works security there. He recognized Anthony's name when I asked. Says he's been coming in regularly for about 18 months. Rose's stomach dropped. "How bad?" "The casino doesn't give out specific numbers, but Eric says Anthony's usually at the high-stakes poker tables, and he doesn't win often." Patricia turned the laptop around. On the screen was a series of credit card statements, Anthony's, obtained by Patricia through methods Rose decided not to ask about. Cash advances. Thousands of dollars withdrawn from casino ATMs. Credit card payments made, then more advances taken. The debt was cycling, growing. "My God," Rose whispered. "There's more." Patricia clicked to another tab. "His business is doing fine. I checked the county records. He's pulled permits for 6 major jobs in the last year. He's not struggling. He's bleeding money through gambling." Rose thought about Anthony's face when he'd told her they needed the house money, the desperation in his eyes. She'd thought it was about the car, about Diana's demands. But it was about this, his secret, his shame. "Does Diana know?" Rose asked. "I don't know, but I suspect she knows something's wrong, even if she doesn't know what." That evening, Rose tried to call Anthony. He didn't answer. She left a message. "Anthony, I need to talk to you. Alone. Just you and me. Please call me back." He showed up 2 hours later. Wouldn't come inside. Stood on the porch, arms crossed. "What do you want?" "I know about the gambling," Rose said quietly. Anthony's face went white, then red. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been trying to understand what happened to my son, how we got here." "Don't." Anthony's voice shook. "Don't make this about you trying to help. You don't want to help. You want to control. You want to judge. I want to understand." "Then here it is." Anthony's voice rose. "I screwed up, okay? I got in over my head. I owe people money. Real money. And yes, I need the house to fix it. There. Are you happy?" Rose stepped toward him. "Honey, let me help you the right way. There are programs." "I don't need a program. I need cash. $40,000 cash, or—" He stopped. "Or what?" Anthony looked away. "Nothing. Forget it." "Anthony, are you in danger?" "I'm handling it." "By stealing from your mother?" "It's not stealing. It's mine anyway. You were just going to leave it to me when you died, so what's the difference if I get it now?" Rose felt like he'd slapped her. "The difference is I'm alive, Anthony. I'm alive and I need a place to live, and I don't exist just to be your inheritance." Anthony's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who'd cried in her lap after falling off his bike. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean—" Then his phone buzzed. He looked at it. His expression hardened again. "I have to go." "Anthony, I'll figure it out. Just stay out of it." He left. Rose stood on her porch and watched him drive away. That night, she told Patricia everything Anthony had said. $40,000, Patricia said. "That's specific. He owes someone $40,000. What do I do?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then, you protect yourself. Because Rose, honey, if he's desperate enough, he'll do whatever it takes. And Diana will push him to do it. Rose knew Patricia was right, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. She went to bed that night and dreamed of Anthony at 10 years old, helping Thomas in the garden. In the dream, Thomas looked at her and said, "Sometimes you can't save people from themselves, Rosie. Sometimes you just have to let them fall." She woke up crying. But when morning came, she called Robert Harrison and said, "I'm ready. Let's finish this." Robert had prepared everything meticulously. The trust was complete and filed. The psychiatric evaluation had come back. Rose Long, fully competent, no signs of cognitive decline. Character witnesses were lined up. Evidence was documented. "Now we wait," Robert said. "They'll make one more move. They always do." He was right. 3 days later, on a gray Wednesday afternoon, Anthony and Diana showed up at Rose's door together. No phone call first, no warning. Diana was carrying a leather folder. Anthony looked sick. "We need to talk," Diana said. "Now." Rose let them in. They sat in the living room, the room where this had all started. Diana opened the folder and pulled out papers. "We've consulted with our own lawyer. These are quitclaim deed documents. You sign these and the house transfers to Anthony. We'll give you 60 days to find a new place. That's more than generous. We'll even help you move." Rose looked at the papers, looked at Diana's hard expression, at Anthony, who wouldn't meet her eyes. "No," Rose said. "Mom," Anthony started. "Let me finish." Rose's voice was steel. "I know about the gambling, Anthony. I know you owe $40,000. I know Diana put a deposit on a car you can't afford. I know you've been calling my doctors trying to get me declared incompetent. I know you filed a false report with Adult Protective Services." Diana's eyes narrowed. "You can't prove—" Rose pulled out her phone, played the recording from their driveway. Diana's voice filled the room. "She's one old woman. If we push hard enough, she'll cave. They always do." The color drained from Diana's face. "I have documentation of everything," Rose continued. "The false APS report, the calls to my doctor, your Facebook posts about buying a luxury car while claiming you're struggling financially. And I have a psychiatric evaluation proving I'm perfectly competent." She stood up, her hand shaking slightly but her voice steady. "This is my house, my home, and I'm not giving it to you. Not now, not like this. Maybe not ever." Diana stood too, her face twisted with rage. "You selfish bitch! Anthony is your only child. We're your family. Family doesn't give ultimatums. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't try to steal from their elderly relatives." Rose's voice rose. "You came into my home and gave me 1 week to pack up my life. You filed false reports. You called me confused and forgetful when I'm neither. You treated me like an obstacle instead of a human being." "We need that money!" Diana's voice was breaking now, desperation showing through. "Anthony's in real trouble. People are calling, making threats. If he doesn't pay, then he'll face the consequences of his choices," Rose said. "Like an adult. But I'm not sacrificing my security, my home, my life for his gambling debts. I won't do it." "Fine." Diana's voice went cold, calculated. "Then we'll file for emergency guardianship. We'll claim you're a danger to yourself. We'll have doctors testify that you're paranoid and delusional. We'll tie this up in court for years. You'll spend every penny you have on lawyers, and in the end you'll lose anyway because you're old and we're family and the courts always side with family." Rose met Diana's eyes. "Go ahead. Try it. I have evidence. I have witnesses. I have a lawyer who specializes in elder abuse. And I have the truth." "The truth doesn't matter," Diana screamed. "Only power matters. And we have more power than you." "Get out of my house," Rose said quietly. "Both of you. Now." Anthony had been silent through the entire exchange, his head in his hands. Now he looked up, his eyes red. "Mom, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just—" "Get out, Anthony." "I never wanted it to be like this. Diana said it would be easy, that you'd understand." "I said get out!" Diana grabbed Anthony's arm and pulled him toward the door, but at the threshold she turned back. "You'll regret this, Rose. You'll die alone in this house, and when you're gone, it'll be Anthony's anyway. You're just delaying the inevitable." Rose didn't respond. She just closed the door and locked it. Then she walked to her bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and let herself shake. For 5 minutes she allowed the fear and grief and rage to wash over her. Then she picked up her phone and called Robert Harrison. "It's time," she said. "Send the letters." "Are you sure?" Rose looked at the photo on her nightstand. Her and Thomas on their wedding day, young and hopeful and innocent. "I'm sure." The letters went out the next morning. Official correspondence on Robert Harrison's law firm letterhead, delivered by certified mail. To Anthony Long and Diana Long, you are hereby invited to attend the closing of property transfer for 742 Maple Street, this Friday at 10 a.m. at the offices of Harrison & Associates. Your presence is requested as interested parties. Robert had been clever with the wording. Closing and property transfer implied Anthony was getting what he wanted. Interested parties suggested they had a stake in the outcome. They would show up thinking they'd won. Rose spent the next 3 days preparing. Patricia stayed with her, providing moral support and helping organize documents. Gloria stopped by daily with food and encouragement. "You're doing the right thing," Gloria said, squeezing Rose's hand. "Don't let guilt change your mind." Rose wasn't feeling guilt anymore. She was feeling something colder, clearer. Purpose. Thursday evening, her phone rang. Diana's number. Rose answered. "What's this meeting about?" Diana demanded, no preamble. "Exactly what the letter says. A closing." "You're signing over the house?" Rose paused just long enough to let hope bloom. "We'll discuss everything Friday." "You made the right choice, Rose." Diana's voice was satisfied, triumphant. "This is best for everyone." After hanging up, Rose looked at Patricia. "She thinks she won." "Good. Makes the fall harder." Friday morning dawned clear and bright. Rose dressed in a navy suit, the same one she'd worn to Thomas's funeral. She wanted to look dignified, unshakable. Patricia came with her. At Robert's office, they settled into the conference room. Robert had arranged everything perfectly, documents spread across the table, 2 empty chairs on one side. At 10:02, Anthony and Diana arrived. They were dressed up too, Anthony in slacks and a button-down, Diana in a dress suit and heels. Diana was carrying a designer purse Rose had never seen before, probably bought on credit, anticipating the windfall. Diana's face lit up when she saw the conference room set up. "Is the title company here? When do we sign?" "Please sit down," Robert said, his voice professionally neutral. They sat. Anthony looked nervous. Diana looked excited. Robert cleared his throat. "We're here today to finalize the property transfer for 742 Maple Street. As of 6 weeks ago, the property was transferred from Rose Long individual to the Rose Long Living Trust, with Mrs. Long as sole trustee and beneficiary." Diana's smile froze. "What?" Robert continued as if she hadn't spoken. "The trust is irrevocable. Mrs. Long maintains full control of the property during her lifetime. Upon her death, the property will be distributed according to the terms of the trust, terms which can be modified by Mrs. Long at any time." "Wait." Anthony's voice was thin. "You transferred it 6 weeks ago?" "Correct. Before you gave Mrs. Long an ultimatum to vacate. Before any of the recent unpleasantness." Diana stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. "This is fraud. You manipulated her. Actually," Rose said quietly, speaking for the first time, "I contacted Mr. Harrison 6 weeks ago, after I overheard you and Anthony discussing how to get me to move out so you could sell my house." Diana's face went white. Rose continued, her voice steady. "I've also documented everything since then. The false APS report, the calls to my doctor, your threats, your admission that you already spent money you didn't have, assuming you'd get my house." She slid a folder across the table. "It's all here. Recordings, screenshots, witness statements, a psychiatric evaluation proving I'm competent." Anthony was staring at the table, his hands clenched into fists. Diana looked like she might physically attack someone. "You can't do this," Diana hissed. "We'll sue. You can try," Robert said calmly. "But I should inform you that any lawsuit will be immediately countered with a civil suit for attempted elder abuse, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The evidence is overwhelming." "Anthony is her son. He has rights." "He has no rights to his mother's property while she's alive and competent," Robert said. "Which she is." Diana turned to Anthony. "Say something, don't just sit there." But Anthony was looking at Rose, really looking at her, maybe for the first time in months. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "How could you?" Rose felt her throat tighten, but her voice remained steady. "How could I? How could you, Anthony? I'm your mother. I raised you. I loved you. I would have helped you with your gambling debts if you'd asked. I would have done anything for you. But you didn't ask. You demanded. You tried to take. You treated me like an inconvenience. I was desperate. So was I. Desperate to keep my home. Desperate to maintain my independence. Desperate to understand what happened to my son." Rose's voice broke. "You gave me 1 week, Anthony. 1 week to pack up my life so Diana could have a car." "It wasn't about the car," Anthony whispered. "I owe people. Bad people. You thought you could steal from your mother to cover your mistakes. You thought I wouldn't fight back." Rose stood up. "You were wrong." Diana grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "This isn't over. We'll destroy you. We'll tell everyone you're a bitter old woman who turned on her own family. You'll do nothing," Robert said sharply. "Because if you continue this harassment, Mrs. Long will file for a restraining order, and she'll win." Diana stormed out. Anthony sat frozen for another moment, then slowly stood. "Mom, Goodbye, Anthony." He flinched like she'd hit him. Then he left too. Rose sat back down, her legs suddenly weak. Patricia's arm went around her shoulders. "You did it," Patricia said softly. "I know. You okay?" Rose thought about that. Was she okay? She'd just severed her relationship with her only child. She'd humiliated them. She'd won the battle, but lost something irreplaceable in the process. "I will be," she said finally. And somehow, she believed it. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Rose kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Anthony to call, for Diana to show up, for something. But there was only silence. Patricia stayed for another week before returning to Arizona. "Call me any time," she said at the airport. "Day or night. You're not alone in this." Gloria came by daily with casseroles and gossip. "The whole neighborhood's talking," she said, "about how you stood up to them. People are calling you brave." Rose didn't feel brave. She felt tired and sad, but she also felt something else. Free. 2 weeks after the confrontation, a letter arrived. Not certified mail this time, just a regular envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Diana's handwriting, sharp and angry. "You've made a powerful enemy. I hope your precious house is worth dying alone." Rose showed it to Robert Harrison. "Document it," he said, "but don't respond. She's lashing out because she lost." Rose filed the letter away with all the other evidence, just in case. But Diana didn't contact her again. Neither did Anthony. The silence stretched. 1 month, 2 months. Rose found herself looking at her phone, hoping for a call that never came. She drove past Anthony's house once and saw Diana's car gone, just Anthony's Honda in the driveway. She heard through Gloria's network that Diana had filed for divorce, that she'd moved out, that Anthony was living alone. Rose wondered if she should reach out, but every time she picked up the phone, she remembered his voice. "You were just going to leave it to me when you died, so what's the difference if I get it now?" She remembered Diana's face, twisted with rage and entitlement. She remembered the fear she'd felt, living in her own home, waiting for the next threat. And she put the phone down. Some fractures couldn't be repaired. Some betrayals cut too deep. Rose focused on her own life instead. She joined a support group for elder abuse survivors, heard stories that made her own situation seem mild, met people who'd lost everything to greedy relatives. "You were smart," one woman told her. "You saw it coming and protected yourself. I wasn't that lucky." Rose started volunteering at the senior center, teaching classes on estate planning and recognizing financial exploitation. She became an advocate, her story appearing anonymously in local news articles about protecting the elderly. She tended her garden, had coffee with Gloria, went to church, lived her life. And slowly, the wound began to scab over. But it never fully healed, because every time she harvested tomatoes, she thought of Anthony as a little boy, helping Thomas stake the plants. Every time she sat at her kitchen table, she remembered family breakfasts. Every time she passed the guest room, she thought of all the times Anthony had stayed over when Thomas was sick. Her house was safe. Her independence was secured, but it felt emptier than before. 2 weeks after the disastrous closing meeting, Rose received a formal legal complaint. Diana and Anthony were suing to void the trust, claiming undue influence by Robert Harrison and diminished capacity. "They're desperate," Robert said, reviewing the paperwork. "Everything here is easily disprovable, but it'll still be stressful." He wasn't wrong. The discovery process was invasive and exhausting. Rose had to provide medical records, financial statements, detailed timelines. She was deposed for 6 hours, Diana's lawyer asking the same questions over and over, trying to trip her up. "Mrs. Long, isn't it true you can't remember what you had for breakfast this morning?" "I had oatmeal with blueberries. Same thing I have every morning." "You don't find it suspicious that you happened to consult a lawyer right before your son expressed concerns?" "I consulted a lawyer after overhearing my son and daughter-in-law planning to force me from my home. That's not suspicious. That's prudent." The stress took its toll. Rose's blood pressure spiked. She started getting migraines. One night, she woke with chest pains, and Patricia, who'd flown back when the lawsuit was filed, drove her to the emergency room. "Anxiety attack," the ER doctor said. "But at your age, we can't be too careful. I'm going to recommend you reduce stress." "I'm being sued by my son," Rose said. "Tell me how to reduce that." Lying in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, Rose had her first real moment of doubt. Was this worth it? Was protecting her house worth her health, her peace of mind? She thought about just settling, giving them some money, making it all go away. Then she remembered Diana's face, twisted with rage. Anthony's voice. "It's mine anyway." The way they'd filed false reports, tried to have her declared incompetent, treated her like an obstacle to be removed. No, she'd come too far to back down now. But God, she was tired. Patricia sat beside her bed, holding her hand. "You don't have to keep fighting, Rose. No one would blame you if you settled." "I would blame me," Rose said quietly. "If I give in now, I'm saying they were right to treat me that way. I'm saying elderly people should just accept abuse from their families. I can't do that." "Then we fight," Patricia said firmly. "But you need to take care of yourself. Thomas would never forgive me if I let you kill yourself over this." Rose squeezed her sister-in-law's hand. "Thank you for being here. Where else would I be?" Robert Harrison brought more good news and bad news. Good. Their case was falling apart. Diana's lawyer had uncovered no evidence of undue influence. The psychiatric evaluation was rock solid. Bad. Diana was getting more aggressive, filing motion after motion, trying to drag things out. "She wants to exhaust you," Robert explained. "Make you too tired to keep fighting. It's a common tactic." "How long can this go on?" "Months, potentially. But Rose, they're going to lose. The question is whether they'll accept that or keep throwing good money after bad." The answer came 2 days later in an unexpected form. Diana showed up at Rose's door on a Tuesday afternoon, alone. Rose almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. Diana looked different, thinner, her clothes less polished, no designer purse, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of her usual sleek style. "Can I come in?" Diana asked. No edge to her voice, just exhaustion. Rose hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat in the living room. Diana folded her hands in her lap, staring at them for a long moment before speaking. "I want to drop the lawsuit." Rose waited. "Anthony doesn't know I'm here. Diana's voice cracked. "He's not doing well. The gambling got worse after the closing. He borrowed money from loan sharks. They're threatening him. I've been trying to help, but I can't anymore. I'm filing for divorce." "I heard." Diana looked up, surprised. Then she laughed bitterly. "Of course you did. Small town." "Why are you here, Diana?" "Because I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of living with someone who's drowning and pulling me down with him. I'm tired of pretending this was ever going to work." She leaned forward. "I'll drop the lawsuit. Convince Anthony to drop it. All I want is $100,000. Settlement for pain and suffering, or whatever you want to call it. I'll take it. Divorce Anthony and disappear. You'll never hear from me again?" Rose studied her daughter-in-law's face, looking for the manipulation, the calculation. But all she saw was bone-deep weariness. "You're offering to walk away for money." "I'm offering to end this nightmare for everyone." Diana's eyes were dry but red-rimmed. "Look, I know what you think of me. Gold digger, manipulator. Maybe you're right. But I grew up with nothing, Rose. I swore I'd never be poor again. When I met Anthony, I thought he was stable, safe, someone who'd never leave me struggling." She shook her head. "I was wrong. He's got demons I can't fight. And honestly, I don't want to anymore." "And the 100,000? "Enough to start over somewhere new city, new life, away from all of this." Rose was quiet for a long moment. $100,000. It would hurt financially, but it was manageable. She could sell some investments, take it from her savings. The lawsuit would end. The stress would end. She could have peace. "No," Rose said. Diana's face fell. "What?" "I said no. See you in court." "But why? I'm offering you an out." "You're offering me a bribe to go away quietly, to let you walk away with money after what you did." Rose's voice was steady. "You tried to steal my home. You filed false reports. You caused me to have panic attacks and end up in the hospital. And now you want me to pay you to stop? No, Diana. Face the consequences of your actions." Diana stood up, her face flushing. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe, but at least I'll regret it on my terms." After Diana left, Rose sat in the quiet house and wondered if she'd just made a terrible mistake. $100,000 for peace. It had been tempting, but something in Diana's eyes had bothered her. Relief, maybe. Like she'd wanted Rose to say no. Like she needed someone to hold her accountable because she couldn't do it herself. Or maybe Rose was reading too much into it. Maybe Diana was just desperate and Rose had just made everything harder for everyone. Gloria came by that evening and Rose told her everything. "You did the right thing," Gloria said firmly. "You can't reward bad behavior, even if it would make your life easier." "I hope you're right." "I am. Trust me." The trial took place on a cold morning in November, 6 months after Anthony had first given Rose 1 week to leave her house. 6 months that felt like 6 years. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled, with fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. Anthony and Diana sat with their lawyer, a young man who looked increasingly uncomfortable as the proceeding began. Rose sat with Robert Harrison and Patricia. Gloria was in the gallery, along with Pastor Williams from Rose's church and 3 members of her support group. Rose hadn't asked them to come, but they'd shown up anyway. Her community, her chosen family. Diana's lawyer presented their case first. He argued that Rose had been unduly influenced by Robert Harrison, that the trust had been created under pressure, that Rose had been confused and vulnerable. Then Robert stood up and systematically destroyed every argument. He presented the psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Martinez examined Mrs. Long extensively. His conclusion: she is cognitively intact, with no signs of dementia, confusion, or diminished capacity. He presented the timeline. Mrs. Long contacted my office 6 weeks before her son gave her an ultimatum. She initiated the trust creation. She made all decisions independently. He presented the evidence. The recordings of Diana and Anthony discussing their plans, the false APS report, the calls to Rose's doctors, the threatening letter Diana had sent. "This is not a case of undue influence," Robert said. "This is a case of attempted elder abuse by family members who saw an elderly woman as an asset to be liquidated." Diana's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him down. Then Rose took the stand. Diana's lawyer cross-examined her, trying to find inconsistencies, trying to make her seem confused or manipulated. But Rose had been a nurse for 37 years. She was used to staying calm under pressure, used to being questioned by doctors and administrators and patient families. She answered every question clearly, directly. "Mrs. Long, don't you find it odd that you felt the need to hide your actions from your son?" "I didn't hide them. I protected myself. There's a difference." "You recorded private conversations. I recorded conversations happening in my own driveway about plans to institutionalize me against my will. That's not invasion of privacy. That's self-defense. You have denied your son his inheritance. I'm alive. You don't inherit from living people. And even if I was dying tomorrow, it's my property. I can leave it to whomever I choose." The lawyer sat down, looking defeated. Then Anthony took the stand. He was pale, hollow-eyed. He'd lost weight. His hands shook as he was sworn in. Robert's cross-examination was gentle but devastating. "Mr. Long, did you give your mother 1 week to vacate her home?" "Yes, but yes or no, please." "Yes." "Did you have any legal right to evict her?" "No." "Did you call her doctors without her permission, suggesting she needed cognitive evaluation?" "I was worried about her." "Yes or no, Mr. Long?" "Yes." "Did you file a report with Adult Protective Services?" Anthony looked at Diana. She was staring at the table, her jaw clenched. "Diana filed it. I signed it." "So you knowingly filed a false report claiming your mother was unable to care for herself?" "I thought—" "Yes or no?" Anthony's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." The testimony continued. Rose watched her son fall apart on the stand, and part of her wanted to stop it, wanted to stand up and say it was enough. But she stayed silent. This was necessary. Painful, but necessary. Finally, it was over. The judge reviewed the evidence, then looked at Anthony and Diana with obvious disgust. "This court finds no evidence of undue influence or diminished capacity. Mrs. Long is clearly competent and acted independently in creating her trust. The lawsuit is dismissed." He paused. "Furthermore, I'm troubled by the evidence of harassment and false reporting. Mrs. Long, do you wish to pursue a restraining order?" Robert looked at Rose. She hesitated. "Yes, Your Honor." "Granted. Mr. Long, Ms. Foster, you are to have no contact with Mrs. Long except through legal counsel. Violation will result in immediate arrest." The gavel struck. "We're adjourned." It was over. Rose sat back in her chair, suddenly exhausted. Patricia hugged her. Gloria squeezed her shoulder. Pastor Williams said, "Well done." But Rose didn't feel victorious. She felt hollow. Across the courtroom, Anthony was crying. Diana had already left, walking out before the judge finished speaking. Anthony sat alone at the defendant's table, his head in his hands. Rose stood up, took 1 step toward him, then stopped. The restraining order was in place. She couldn't approach him, even if she wanted to. Robert guided her out of the courtroom. Outside, the November air was cold and sharp. "You won," Robert said. "I know." "Are you okay?" Rose thought about that. She'd protected her home, defended her rights, stood up to abuse and manipulation. She'd won, but she'd also lost her son, maybe forever. "Ask me tomorrow," she said. 3 months passed. Rose settled into a new routine. The support group met every Tuesday. She volunteered at the senior center on Thursdays. Gloria came by most days for coffee. Patricia called every Sunday. The restraining order meant Anthony couldn't contact her. Rose told herself that was for the best, that she needed space, that he needed to face consequences. But every time the phone rang, part of her hoped it was him. It never was. Through Gloria's network, Rose heard updates. Diana had moved to Columbus, working in retail, living in a small apartment. She'd started therapy. Anthony was still in town, but barely. He'd lost his contracting business, was working for someone else now, basic construction work. He'd joined a Gamblers Anonymous group. Rose wondered if he was getting better, if he was healing, but she couldn't ask. The restraining order made sure of that. One afternoon, Rose was in the garden, her sanctuary, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. "Mrs. Long, this is Janet Reeves from Riverside Gamblers Anonymous." Rose's heart stuttered. "Is Anthony? He's fine, but he's been attending meetings regularly, 6 months sober from gambling, and in our program, making amends is part of recovery. He's asked if he could write you a letter. Not to contact you directly, we understand about the restraining order, but a letter sent through me that you could choose to read or not." Rose sat down on the porch steps. "A letter? Only if you're comfortable. You can say no. This is about your healing, too." Rose was quiet for a long time. Tell him he can send it, but I'm not promising to respond." "That's more than fair. Thank you, Mrs. Long." The letter arrived a week later. Rose held it for 2 days before opening it. The handwriting was Anthony's. Neater than usual, like he'd taken his time. "Dear Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to even read this. But my sponsor says I need to make amends, and even if you throw this away, I need to say these things. I'm sorry. Those words aren't enough, but they're all I have. I'm sorry for threatening you, for trying to take your home, for filing false reports and calling your doctors and treating you like an obstacle instead of my mother. Diana and I are divorced. I'm not blaming her. I made my own choices. But being away from her has helped me see clearly. I was drowning in gambling debt, and instead of asking for help, I tried to steal from you. I convinced myself it was okay because you'd leave it to me anyway. I see now how sick that thinking was. I've been sober from gambling for 6 months, going to meetings, working with a sponsor. I'm paying off my debts slowly, working construction, living in a small apartment, living the way I should have been living all along. Simply, honestly, I don't know if I'll ever become the son you raised, the son Dad would have been proud of. But I'm trying. I'm not asking you to lift the restraining order. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and I'm working to be better. I love you. I know I have no right to say that after what I did, but I do. Anthony Rose read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her nightstand drawer. She didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she didn't throw it away either. 1 year after the trial, Rose Long was 73 years old and living in her cottage on Maple Street. The tomato plants were coming in beautifully again. She'd published her story, anonymously, in a national magazine about elder abuse. The article had gone viral. She'd received hundreds of emails from people in similar situations, thanking her for speaking out. She'd become a regular speaker at senior centers, teaching workshops on recognizing financial exploitation. "Trust your instincts," she told audiences. "If something feels wrong, it probably is, and you're never too old to fight back." Her house was safe. Her life was full. She had Gloria and Patricia and her support group. She had purpose. But the chair across from her at breakfast was still empty. Sometimes she thought about calling Anthony. The restraining order had expired 3 months ago. She could reach out if she wanted, but she wasn't sure she wanted. Or rather, she wasn't sure what reaching out would mean. Forgiveness? Permission to re-enter her life? She wasn't ready for either. Then, on a Tuesday morning in June, her doorbell rang. Rose answered it and found Anthony standing on her porch. He looked different, thinner, older, but somehow more solid, like he was actually present in his own life. "Hi, Mom." His voice was tentative. "I know I don't have the right to just show up, but I've been sober for a year, really sober, Not just from gambling, but from all the other sorry stuff that made me hurt you. And I wondered if maybe we could talk. Just talk. I'm not asking for anything else." Rose looked at her son, at this man who'd broken her heart, but might be healing his own. She thought about Thomas, about what he would have wanted, about whether some things could be repaired or whether some fractures were permanent. She didn't know the answer, but maybe that was okay. "Okay," she said finally. "We can talk." Anthony's face flooded with relief and hope and fear all at once. "Thank you." She didn't invite him in. Not yet. Instead, she stepped out onto the porch and sat in one of the wicker chairs. Anthony sat in the other. They talked. Carefully. Honestly. Anthony told her about the meetings, the therapy, the slow work of rebuilding his life. Rose told him about her advocacy work, about the article, about how she was learning to live with the hurt. "I don't know if I can trust you again," Rose said at one point. "I know. I don't know if you should. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. Slowly is good. Slowly is more than I deserve." As the sun moved across the sky, Rose looked at her son and saw glimpses of the boy he'd been. And maybe, just maybe, the man he could become. Some fractures heal. Some leave scars. But at least they were both still standing. And that, Rose thought, was something.